The horse collapsed 20 feet from my porch. Not stumbled. Collapsed. Like something inside it had finally quit. The girl riding it didn't scream. She threw herself off, grabbed the boy strapped to the saddle, and ran toward my door like the devil himself was on her heels. That's when I saw the blood. I was standing at the window hammer in one hand, whiskey in the other. I'd been boarding up the east window for winter, the same window Rebecca used to stand at while waiting for me to come in from the fields. 4 years had passed since I'd buried her and Annie under the cottonwood tree, and I still couldn't bring myself to fix that window properly. Every autumn I'd hammer a few boards. Every spring I'd take them down, telling myself next year I'd replace the frame. But there was never a next year, just another cycle of boarding up and tearing down like my life had become. The whiskey was for later, for when the sun went down and the silence got too loud. Today marked exactly 4 years since the stagecoach robbery. 4 years since strangers with guns decided my wife's wedding ring was worth more than her life. 4 years since my daughter ran 2 miles through the wilderness before they caught her. I'd found them the next morning still holding hands. So when I saw that horse go down and those 2 children running for their lives, my first instinct was to close the door, lock it, pull the curtains, let someone else be the hero, because I'd learned the hard way that heroes just end up burying the people they love. But the girl looked up at me through the window, and something in her eyes stopped me cold. They weren't pleading eyes, weren't begging eyes. They were eyes that had already decided I was her last chance, and if I said no, she'd figure out something else. I set down the hammer, set down the whiskey, picked up my Winchester rifle, and opened the door. The girl was maybe 14, though hunger and exhaustion made it hard to tell. Dark hair hung in tangles around a face smudged with dirt and what looked like dried blood. Her dress was patched in so many places I couldn't tell what the original fabric had been. Her boots were too big, stuffed with cloth to make them fit. But it was the boy that made me move. He couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Blonde hair matted with sweat, face pale as milk, and his shirt soaked through with blood from a wound in his right shoulder. The girl didn't waste time with pleasantries. She looked at me at the rifle in my hands and said, "My brother's been shot. You have a doctor here, or you know how to dig out a bullet. Not please help us. Not we're sorry to bother you. Just a question. Direct. Practical. Like a soldier asking for a field medic." I'd served in the war. I'd seen that look before, on men who'd watched their friends die, on women who'd watched their towns burn. It was the look of someone who'd already lost everything and was just trying to save one last thing. I lowered the rifle. Bullet go through or still in him? Through, but it won't stop bleeding. Bring him inside. She hesitated, just for a second. Her eyes darted past me, scanning the interior of my cabin, looking for threats, for traps, for anything that might mean danger. Then she looked at the boy, saw how his head lolled against her shoulder, and made her choice. She followed me in. I cleared the kitchen table with one arm, sweeping aside the tin plate and cup that had been my dinner. The boy whimpered when the girl laid him down, but he didn't cry out. Another bad sign. Kids who don't cry are either too tough or too far gone. I grabbed clean cloth from the cupboard, the bottle of whiskey I'd been saving, and the sewing kit Rebecca had left behind. My hands moved on their own, following routines I'd learned during the war. Check the wound, clean it, stop the bleeding. The girl stood at my elbow, watching every move. Her hand rested on a small knife tucked into her belt. She didn't draw it, but the message was clear. If I hurt her brother, she'd try to stop me, hopeless as that might be. "What's your name?" I asked, not looking up from the boy. She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Nora. Nora Dalton. This is my brother, Sam. I'm Jacob Morrison." I poured whiskey over the wound. Sam screamed, his whole body going rigid. Nora grabbed his hand, squeezed hard. "I'm sorry," I said, "but infection'll kill him faster than blood loss." I worked in silence after that. The bullet had gone clean through the meat of his shoulder-missing bone and major arteries by what looked like pure luck. The entry wound was small professional. This wasn't some accidental discharge or wild shot. Whoever pulled that trigger had been aiming to kill. When I finally tied off the bandage, Nora let out a breath she'd been holding for who knows how long. She slumped against the wall, and for the first time I saw how young she really was. Just a kid herself, playing at being strong because someone had to be. "He'll live," I said. "Wound's clean. He's lost blood, but he's young, strong. He'll pull through if we keep it clean and get food in him." Nora nodded. She opened her mouth to speak. Closed it, tried again. "Thank you. We'll be gone by morning." "Gone where?" She looked away. "Does it matter?" I studied her. Really looked at her this time, at the way she positioned herself between me and her brother, at the white knuckle grip on that knife, at the dark circles under her eyes that spoke of weeks without proper sleep. "It matters if you want him to survive the night. He needs rest, food, medicine. We don't have money." Her voice went hard again, defensive. Did I ask for money? The question seemed to throw her. She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language, like the concept of help without payment was something she couldn't quite process. I turned away ladled soup from the pot on the stove. It was thin stuff, mostly broth and vegetables, but it was hot, and it was food. I set the bowl in front of her. "Eat, then we'll talk." She looked at the soup the way a starving dog looks at a steak, desperate but suspicious. "What do you want from us?" "Nothing. Eat. People don't just help, not for free. There's always a price." I pulled out a chair, sat down across from her. "You're right. There's always a price. But sometimes the price is just having to live with yourself if you don't help. Now eat before it gets cold." She picked up the spoon. Her hand shook so badly she almost dropped it. She took one sip, then another, forcing herself to go slow. I could see the hunger in every swallow, the way her body wanted to gulp it all down, but she maintained control, discipline, survival instinct. "When's the last time you ate?" I asked. 3 days, maybe 4. We've been running." "Running from what?" She set down the spoon, looked at Sam still unconscious on my kitchen table, then back at me. And something in her expression changed. The walls came down just a little, just enough. "From the man who killed our parents." The words hung in the air like smoke. Simple, terrible, true. I waited, didn't push, just waited for her to continue. 3 weeks ago, our barn caught fire. Our parents were inside. They didn't make it out." Her voice was flat, emotionless, like she was reading from a newspaper. "Uncle Garrett showed up for the funeral, said he'd take care of us, give us a home. 2 days later, Sam and I were in the hayloft, and we heard him talking to some men. Heard him say the fire wasn't an accident, that he'd paid someone to set it, that with our parents gone, the land would be his, and when the railroad came through next year, he'd be rich." She picked up the spoon again, stirred the soup without eating. "We ran that night. Took our father's horse and whatever supplies we could carry. Uncle Garrett sent men after us. They've been hunting us for 3 weeks. This morning, they caught up. We were crossing the river when one of them shot Sam." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Where were you headed?" "Canada. Someone told us there's a town near the border that doesn't ask questions about orphans. That's 200 miles north, through mountains. Winter's coming. You have a better idea." I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the dead horse lying in my yard, at the empty road beyond, at the sun sinking toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood. 4 years ago, I'd stood at a different window, watched that same sun set, waited for Rebecca and Annie to come home, told myself they were fine, probably just stopped to rest, probably spending the night at a friend's house in town. I'd been wrong. By the time I went looking, it was too late. The outlaws were gone, my family was dead, and I was left with nothing but guilt in a cabin that felt too big and too empty. I turned back to Nora. "You stay here, both of you, at least until the boy heals." Her eyes went wide. "What? You heard me. Stay. It's not safe to move him, and even if it was, you wouldn't make it 10 miles on foot. Winter hits hard up here. You need shelter, food, time. Why would you help us? You don't even know us." I looked at Sam, pale and still on my table, looked at Nora trying so hard to be strong, and I saw them, Rebecca and Annie, not literally, but in the way that matters, in the space they'd left behind, in the silence that had filled this house for 4 years. Because someone should have helped my family when they needed it, and no one did. I won't make that mistake again. I didn't wait for her to respond. I walked to the stairs, climbed them slowly, and stood outside a door I hadn't opened in 4 years. Annie's room. The paint on the door was still bright, still cheerful, with hand-painted flowers Rebecca had added when Annie turned 5. I turned the handle. The room was exactly as Annie had left it. Small bed with a patchwork quilt, wooden rocking horse in the corner, shelf of books, and a rag doll sitting on the pillow. Dust covered everything like snow. For a moment I couldn't breathe. The grief hit me fresh sharp as the day I'd buried them. I heard Annie's laugh, saw Rebecca tucking her in at night, smelled the lavender soap my wife used to wash the sheets. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. Nora appeared supporting Sam, who'd woken up and was barely managing to stand. "This was my daughter's room," I said. My voice sounded strange, distant. "She doesn't need it anymore. You can sleep here." Nora stepped into the doorway, looked at the bed, the toys, the careful preservation of a life interrupted. When she looked at me again, there were tears in her eyes. "Someone died here," she whispered. "Yes. Recently, 4 years ago, but some days it feels like yesterday." She understood. I could see it in her face. The recognition of shared grief, the knowledge that some wounds never fully heal, they just become part of who you are. "Thank you," she said quietly. I nodded once, then turned and walked back downstairs. I didn't trust myself to say anything else, didn't trust my voice not to break. I sat in my chair by the fireplace, rifle across my lap, and listened to the sounds of children settling in upstairs. Footsteps, quiet voices, the creak of bed springs, normal sounds, human sounds, the kind of sounds this house hadn't heard in far too long. I didn't sleep that night. I sat and watched the fire burn down to embers, then watched those embers fade to ash. And I thought about choices. About the choice I'd made to stay home that day instead of going with Rebecca and Annie. About the choice those outlaws made to pull their triggers. About all the small choices that add up to tragedy. And I thought about the choice I'd just made, to open my door, to let these children in, to try one more time to do the right thing. I didn't know if it was the right choice, didn't know if I just put a target on my own back, didn't know if I had the strength to protect them if Garrett Dalton's men came calling, but I knew I couldn't turn them away. Because 4 years ago, someone could have helped my family, could have been there when that stagecoach was attacked, could have stopped those men, could have saved them, and no one did. So this time I would be the one who helped. I would be the one who stood between these kids and the darkness hunting them, even if it killed me. The sun rose slowly the next morning, painting the valley in shades of gold. I dozed in my chair, Winchester still across my lap, and woke to the smell of coffee. Strong coffee, the way Rebecca used to make it. I stood joints creaking and found Nora in the kitchen. She'd found the coffee, the pot had the stove going. She turned when she heard me, and I saw she hadn't slept either. "I hope you don't mind," she said. "I wanted to make myself useful." "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do." She poured 2 cups, handed me one. "You gave us your daughter's room. That's not nothing." I took the coffee, sipped it. It was good. Better than I'd managed in years. "How's Sam?" "Still sleeping. Fever broke around dawn." "That's good. Means the infection didn't take hold." We stood in awkward silence, 2 strangers bound by circumstance, neither quite sure what to say. Then Sam called out from upstairs, and Nora was moving, taking the stairs 2 at a time. I followed slower, found Sam sitting up in bed, looking small and lost in Annie's room. He saw me and flinched. "It's okay," Nora said quickly. "This is Mr. Morrison. He helped us. He's safe." Sam looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. "Are you going to hurt us?" The question hit harder than it should have. "No, son, you're safe here. Nora said strangers are dangerous." Your sister's smart, but I'm not dangerous, not to you." He studied me with that unnerving intensity children sometimes have. Then he nodded, accepting my word. "I'm hungry." Relief flooded Nora's face. "Hungry is good. Hungry means you're getting better." I made breakfast. Eggs from my chicken's bread I'd baked 2 days ago, more coffee. We ate at the kitchen table, the three of us, and it felt strange. Wrong and right at the same time. Wrong because they weren't Rebecca and Annie. Right because the house felt alive again. After breakfast, Nora insisted on helping with chores. I tried to argue, told her she should rest, but she was adamant. "I'm 14, and I'm not a burden." So I let her help, showed her how to collect eggs, how to feed the horses, how to check the fence line. She was a quick learner, asked good questions, worked without complaining. Sam stayed inside, still weak from blood loss, but I could see him watching through the window. By afternoon he ventured onto the porch, sitting in the sun like a cat. It was almost peaceful. Then I saw the rider. He came from the east, moving at an easy pace, close enough that I could make out details. Mid-40s, gray beard, badge glinting on his chest. Deputy Marshal Dalton Hayes. "Get inside," I said quietly. "Both of you, now." Nora's head snapped up. She saw the rider, went pale. "Is that one of them?" "No, it's the law, which might be worse. Go." She grabbed Sam and disappeared into the house. I heard the door lock, heard footsteps running upstairs. I stood on my porch, rifle held loose but ready, and waited. Hayes reined his horse to a stop 20 feet out. Smart man. Knew better than to crowd an armed rancher. He raised one hand in greeting, kept the other visible and away from his gun. "Afternoon, Jacob," he called out. "Mind if I water my horse?" I'd known Hayes for 2 years. He was the one who'd investigated Rebecca and Annie's murders. Never caught the men who did it, but he'd tried, really tried. Even came out to check on me a few times after making sure I hadn't done something stupid. We'd built a kind of friendship, the kind born from shared tragedy and mutual respect. But right now, with 2 fugitive children hiding in my house, friendship felt like a liability. "Help yourself," I said. "Coffee's on if you want some." He dismounted, led his horse to the trough, moved slow, casual, but his eyes were taking in everything. The dead horse still lying in my yard, the extra dishes I hadn't cleaned yet, the small boot prints in the dirt near my door. He tied his horse to the post and climbed the porch steps. I handed him a cup of coffee. We stood in silence, 2 men who'd seen enough of life to know when something was wrong. "That horse wasn't here last time I came by," Hayes said finally. "Found it wandering, probably from a ranch nearby. Jacob." He looked at me, and I saw the weariness in his eyes. "We've known each other long enough. You're a bad liar." I said nothing. Hayes sighed. "There's a bounty out. $50 for information on 2 kids. Girl about 14, boy about 8. Disappeared from a ranch near Missoula 3 weeks ago." My hand tightened on the coffee cup. "What's the charge?" "No charge. Their uncle's looking for them. Says they ran away after their parents died, and he's worried." "Worried?" "That's what he says." Hayes took a long drink of coffee. "I met the uncle, Garrett Dalton. Rich man, owns half of Missoula, smooth talker. Offered to fund a new school in Stevensville if I found those kids. Generous? Very." Hayes set down his cup. "Thing is, I also talked to people who knew the family. The Daltons. Good people from what I hear. Worked their land honest. Then the barn burned down. Both parents died. And within 2 days the kids disappeared, and Garrett Dalton filed papers claiming the property." He looked at me. Really looked at me. "Convenient timing, don't you think?" "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I have a job to do. I'm saying there's a bounty, and if I don't look for those kids, someone else will. Someone who doesn't care if they make it back alive." He paused. "I'm also saying I lost my daughter 5 years ago. Cholera. I couldn't save her. But if there are 2 scared kids out there alone and running, I want to be the one who finds them, not some bounty hunter." Understanding passed between us. Hayes knew. Maybe not for certain, but he knew. "If you see anything," he said carefully, "you let me know. I'll make sure they're safe." Then he tipped his hat and walked back to his horse, mounted up, rode away without looking back. I watched until he disappeared over the ridge. Then I went inside. Nora was standing by the window, pale as death. "He knows we're here, maybe, but he won't turn you in. Not yet." "How do you know?" "Because I know him. He's a good man. But that doesn't mean we're safe." That night I sat by the fireplace again. This time Nora joined me. Sam was asleep upstairs, fever-gone color returning to his face. "Tell me about your family," she said quietly. I didn't want to. Hadn't talked about them in 4 years, but something about this girl, about her quiet strength, made me want to share. My wife's name was Rebecca. My daughter was Annie. She was 6 when she died. How? Stagecoach robbery. They were coming back from visiting Rebecca's sister in Helena. I should have gone with them. But I stayed behind. Had cattle to tend. I stared into the fire. A gang hit their coach 10 miles from home, killed the driver, took the money. Rebecca hid Annie under the seats. When they found them, Rebecca begged, offered everything. They took it and shot her anyway. My voice cracked. I cleared my throat, forced myself to continue. Annie ran, made it 2 miles before they caught her. When the marshal found them the next morning, she was still holding her mother's hand. Silence, heavy and thick. "I'm sorry," Nora whispered. "So am I. Do you still think about them? Every day, every hour?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Me too, my parents. Sometimes I wake up and forget they're gone. Then I remember, and it feels like drowning." I put my hand on her shoulder. "It'll get easier, not better, but easier." "Does it get easier?" "Some days." We sat like that until the fire burned low. 2 people bound by grief, finding unexpected comfort in shared pain. Then Nora stood up. "I should check on Sam." "Nora." She turned. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For trusting me. For staying. For reminding me what this house is supposed to sound like." Tears filled her eyes. She nodded, unable to speak, and went upstairs. I stayed by the fire thinking about choices again, about doors opened and doors closed, about second chances and whether I deserved one. Outside the wind picked up. I heard it rattling the shutters, moaning through the eaves, and underneath that sound I thought I heard horses, distant, multiple. I stood, moved to the window, looked out into the darkness. Nothing, just shadows and wind and the vast empty prairie. But the feeling stayed with me, the certainty that we were being watched, that Garrett Dalton's men were out there somewhere, circling like wolves, waiting for the right moment to strike. I checked my rifle, made sure it was loaded, checked the shotgun by the door, the pistol in my belt. Then I climbed the stairs and stood outside Annie's room, listened to the soft breathing of children sleeping. Safe. For now. I made a promise then, silent but binding. Whatever came through that door would have to go through me first. I'd failed to protect Rebecca and Annie. I wouldn't fail again. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Nora helped with chores, grew stronger, more confident. Sam healed quickly the way children do, was soon running around the ranch laughing, being a kid again. I taught Sam how to milk the cow, how to brush down the horses, how to collect eggs without spooking the hens. He soaked it all up like a sponge, asking questions, eager to learn. Nora was different, quieter, more serious. But I'd catch her smiling sometimes when she thought I wasn't looking. Small moments of peace breaking through her armor. A week passed, then 2, no sign of Garrett Dalton's men, no more visits from Hayes. Just quiet days and peaceful nights. I started to hope, started to think maybe we'd gotten away with it. Maybe they'd given up. Maybe we could just live like this, the 3 of us building something new from the ruins of our broken lives. Then one night, I woke to the sound of horses, multiple horses, moving slow, trying to be quiet. I rolled out of bed, grabbed my rifle, moved to the window, looked out. 3 riders stopped at the edge of my property, just sitting there watching the house. One of them pulled out binoculars, scanned my windows. They didn't approach, didn't call out, just watched for 10 long minutes. Then they turned and rode away. But I knew what it meant. They'd found us, and next time they wouldn't just watch. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat in the darkness with my Winchester across my knees, watching the road, listening to every sound the wind carried. Coyotes howling in the distance, the creak of old wood settling, the whisper of grass bending under boots that might or might not be there. When dawn finally broke, painting the valley in shades of gray and gold, I was still sitting, still watching, still waiting for men who didn't come. Nora found me there when she came downstairs. She took one look at my face and knew. They were here, she said. Not a question, a statement. 3 riders just watching. They left before I could get a clear look. They're coming back. Her voice was flat, matter of fact, the voice of someone who'd been running too long to believe in safety. I know, she sat down across from me. We should leave, today, before they come back with more men. Running won't solve this, he'll just keep chasing. Then what do we do? I looked at her. This girl who'd grown up too fast, who'd lost everything and kept going anyway, who'd dragged her wounded brother 200 miles because giving up wasn't in her vocabulary. We make a stand, I said. We end it here. How it's 3 of us against however many men my uncle can hire. We can't win. Maybe not. But we can make it cost him. We can make it hurt. I stood up, started pacing. Your uncle wants the land right. The railroad deal. Yes. Then he needs you alive. Needs you to sign papers, make it legal. Dead, you're worthless to him. That gives us leverage. What kind of leverage? The kind that makes him think twice. The kind that makes him negotiate instead of attack. I stopped, turned to face her. But I need to know everything. The whole truth. About your parents, about the fire, about why your uncle wants that land so badly. Nora was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. It's not just about the railroad. There's something else. Something my father discovered. What? Copper. A massive vein running right under our land. My father was a surveyor before he became a rancher. He knew geology. About 6 months before he died, he found evidence of copper deposits, enough to make someone rich for generations. The pieces started falling into place. Your father told your uncle. They were brothers. My father trusted him, wanted to go into business together, split the profits. She looked down at her hands. But Uncle Garrett wanted it all. He offered to buy the land. My father refused, said it was family land, meant to stay in the family for me and Sam. So your uncle decided to take it another way. The night of the fire, my parents were fighting. I heard them through the cellar door. My father had found out Uncle Garrett was talking to investors trying to buy up surrounding properties. He was planning to force my father out, surround him, make it impossible to develop the mine without going through him. She paused, swallowed hard. My father confronted him, told him to back off. And then the barn caught fire. You think your uncle said it? I know he did. Sam and I were in the cellar because my father told us to hide there whenever Uncle Garrett visited. Said his brother was dangerous. That night we heard shouting. Then we smelled smoke. My mother came down, tried to get us out, but the door was jammed from the outside. Her voice cracked. She burned trying to break it down. I felt something cold settle in my chest. How did you get out? The door finally gave way. But by then the whole house was burning. Sam and I ran. We didn't look back, we just ran. And your uncle, we saw him, standing in the yard, watching it burn. He saw us too, started walking toward us. That's when we ran for the horses. The morning sun was fully up now, streaming through the windows. I could hear Sam moving around upstairs, the sounds of a child waking up, normal sounds in a world that was anything but normal. Does anyone else know about the copper? I asked. My father kept detailed records, survey maps, mineral tests, everything. He had a ledger book he kept locked in his study. Where is it now? Burned. Everything burned. I thought about that. About Garrett Dalton watching his brother's house turn to ash, watching his niece and nephew escape, knowing they were the only witnesses, the only obstacles between him and a fortune. We need proof, I said. Legal proof that the land is yours, that your uncle has no claim. How everything's gone. Not everything. Land claims are recorded at the county office. Deed surveys, property lines. If your father filed his mineral findings with the territory, there'll be copies. In Missoula, where my uncle owns half the town. No, in Helena, the territorial capital. That's where the real records are kept. Hope flickered in Nora's eyes. That's 3 days' ride. 2 if we push hard. But I can't leave you and Sam here alone, not with Dalton's men circling. The hope faded. So we're stuck. Not necessarily. I grabbed my coat. I know someone who might help. I saddled my horse and rode into Stevensville. It was a small town, just a main street and a handful of buildings, but it was home to the only law within 50 miles. Hayes's office was at the far end of town, a small wooden building with a crooked sign that read, Deputy Marshal. I found him at his desk, surrounded by paperwork. He looked up when I entered, and something in his expression told me he'd been expecting me. Jacob, he set down his pen, come to confess, come to ask for help. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. Those kids, they're at your place. No point in lying. Yes. You know there's a bounty. I know. I also know bounties don't always tell the whole story. Hayes was quiet for a moment, and then he stood, walked to the window, looked out at the street. I talked to some people in Missoula about the fire, about the Daltons. And the official story is it was an accident. Lamp oil spilled. Tragic loss. Everyone very sorry. He turned to face me. Unofficial story is Garrett Dalton showed up at his brother's funeral with property papers already drawn up, had a judge in his pocket ready to sign custody of the kids, moved fast, too fast. What do you think happened? I think Thomas Dalton found something valuable on his land. I think his brother wanted it. And I think those kids are the only thing standing between Garrett Dalton and a fortune. So help them. Hayes shook his head slowly. I can't, not officially. Garrett has legal custody papers. A judge signed them. If I interfere, I'm breaking the law. Since when do you care about laws that protect murderers? The words hit home. Hayes flinched. You don't understand. I have a family, a wife, a son. If I go after Garrett, if I make this official, he'll come after them. He has money, power, friends in high places. His voice dropped. I lost my daughter once. I won't risk my son, so you'll let those kids die instead. I didn't say that. He grabbed a piece of paper, scribbled something on it. This is the name of a lawyer in Helena, honest man. Owes me a favor. You get those kids to him, he'll help them fight the custody claim, get them legal protection. Helena's 3 days away. Dalton's men are already watching my place. Then you'll need to be smart about it. He handed me the paper. There's a back trail through the mountains. Harder route, but less traveled. You leave at night, move fast, you might make it. I took the paper. Why are you helping? Hayes looked at me, and I saw the pain in his eyes, raw and deep and never quite healed. Because 5 years ago my daughter got sick. Cholera. I was out chasing outlaws doing my job, and when I got back, she was already gone. My wife begged me to stay home more, to put family first, and I didn't listen. I chose duty over love. He sat down heavily. When I look at those kids, I see my daughter. I see a chance to do the right thing. But I also see my son alive and safe, and I can't risk him. I can't lose him, too. So you're helping the only way you can. It's not enough. It'll never be enough. But it's what I can give. I understood. We'd both lost people we loved. We'd both made choices we couldn't take back, and we were both trying in our own broken ways to make amends. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me yet. Getting them to Helena is the easy part. Keeping them alive long enough to testify is harder. I rode back to the ranch with Hayes's words echoing in my head. He was right. We needed more than just legal papers. We needed time, distance, a plan. I found Nora teaching Sam how to mend fence wire. She'd taken to ranch work like she'd been born to it. Quick hands, good instincts, never complaining. Sam was less interested in the work, more interested in the horses grazing nearby, but he tried. They both looked up when I rode in. Nora read my expression and sent Sam inside. What did he say? She asked. I told her about Hayes, about the lawyer in Helena, about the back trail through the mountains. "When do we leave?" she asked. "Tonight, after dark. We'll need supplies. But we can't be obvious about it. Can't let anyone in town know we're planning a trip. I can help pack. Sam and I don't have much anyway. It's not going to be easy. 3 days hard riding through mountain country. Maybe longer, if we have to avoid Dalton's men. Easier than running blind. At least this time we have a destination." I looked at this girl, barely 14, talking about mountain trails and evading armed men like it was just another chore. She should have been worried about school, about friends, about normal teenage things. Instead, she was planning an escape route through hostile territory. "You're tougher than most men I know," I said. "I'm not tough. I'm just out of options." She started coiling the wire. "My mother used to say that strength isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what needs to be done even when you're terrified." Smart woman. She was. Nora's hand stilled. I wish I'd told her that more often. Told her I loved her. Told her she was a good mother. I was always so focused on growing up, on being independent, that I didn't appreciate what I had. She knew. Parents always know. We worked together in silence, preparing for a journey neither of us wanted to make, but both knew was necessary. As the sun climbed higher, I felt that familiar weight settling on my shoulders, the weight of responsibility, of other lives depending on my choices. I'd felt it before, in the war, in my marriage, and I'd failed before too. Failed Rebecca and Annie when they needed me most. I couldn't fail again. That afternoon, a wagon rolled up to my property. Expensive wagon pulled by matched black horses. And sitting in the driver's seat was a man I'd never met but recognized immediately from Nora's description. Garrett Dalton. He was everything she'd said. Well-dressed, confident. The kind of man used to getting what he wanted. He climbed down from the wagon with the easy grace of someone who'd never done hard labor in his life. I stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. Nora and Sam were inside. I'd told them to stay hidden. "Mr. Morrison, I presume." Garrett's voice was smooth, educated. "I'm Garrett Dalton. I believe you have something of mine." "I don't have anything of yours." "My niece and nephew, Nora and Samuel. They've been misguided, confused. I've come to bring them home." "The kids say you killed their parents." Garrett smiled, patient, understanding, like he was talking to a confused child. "Grief does terrible things to young minds. The fire was a tragedy, an accident, a lamp overturned. I've been searching for them ever since, desperate to give them a proper home. That's not what they remember. With respect, Mr. Morrison, they're children, traumatized children. Their memories are unreliable." He gestured to the wagon. "I have legal custody papers, signed by Judge Whitmore in Missoula. The law is on my side. The law isn't always right. Perhaps not. But it's still the law." He took a step closer. "I understand your hesitation. You're a good man, a hero from what I hear, war veteran. You see 2 scared children and you want to help. That's admirable. But this isn't your fight. These children have family. They have a future. I can give them education opportunity, a real life." "What can you give them?" "A ranch in the middle of nowhere, hard labor and isolation. Safety, something you can't guarantee." Garrett's smile thinned. "I see we're not going to resolve this with words alone." He reached into his coat. I raised the rifle. He froze, then slowly pulled out a leather wallet. "I'm a reasonable man, Mr. Morrison, a businessman. I understand that you've invested time and resources in caring for my niece and nephew. Let me compensate you for your trouble." He opened the wallet, pulled out a stack of bills. $500, more than most men see in 5 years. All you have to do is step aside. Put your money away. 1,000 then. That's my final offer. I looked at him, really looked at him, saw past the expensive clothes and smooth words to the desperation underneath. This wasn't a concerned uncle. This was a man protecting an investment. "Get off my land," I said. Garrett's expression hardened. The friendly mask slipped. "You're making a mistake. Won't be the first time. Those children are mine, legally, morally, and I will have them back." He climbed into his wagon. "I tried to do this the civilized way. Remember that." He snapped the reins and drove off, leaving a cloud of dust hanging in the air like a threat. I watched him disappear down the road, then turned to find Nora standing in the doorway. She'd heard everything. "He's not going to stop," she said. "I know. He'll come back, with men, with guns. I know that too. We should leave now, right now. Forget waiting for dark." I shook my head. "In daylight we're exposed, easy to track, easy to catch. We stick to the plan. We leave tonight. And if they come before then we fight." I spent the rest of the afternoon preparing, checked every gun, every box of ammunition, made sure the horses were fed, rested, ready for a hard ride, packed supplies, food, water, medical kit. Everything we'd need for 3 days on the trail. Sam helped, excited by the adventure of it all. He didn't understand the danger, didn't grasp that we might not make it. I was glad for that. Let him have his innocence a little longer. Nora understood, though. I saw her watching the road, jumping at every sound. She knew what was coming. Night fell slowly, the sun painting the sky in shades of orange and red before finally giving way to darkness. I waited until full dark, until the moon rose and gave us enough light to see the trail. "Time to go," I said. We led the horses out quietly. I'd wrapped their hooves in cloth to muffle the sound. Every detail mattered. Every mistake could be fatal. I lifted Sam onto the saddle, then helped Nora up. She settled behind him, arms wrapped around her brother. I swung up onto my own horse, and that's when I heard it. Hoofbeats. Multiple horses, coming fast. "Go," I shouted. "Ride north. Don't stop." Nora hesitated. "What about you?" "I'll slow them down. Now go." She dug her heels in. The horse bolted, carrying her and Sam into the darkness. I turned my horse to face the sound of approaching riders. 6 of them, maybe more, hard to tell in the darkness. They came into view, silhouettes against the moonlit sky. I recognized one of them, Garrett Dalton. The others were hired guns, hard men with harder eyes. Garrett reined his horse to a stop. "This is your last chance, Morrison. Give me the children, and I'll let you live. Not while I'm breathing." "That can be arranged." He raised his hand. The men with him reached for their guns. I fired first. The shot cracked through the night air. One of Dalton's men jerked backward, hit in the shoulder, tumbled from his saddle. The others scattered, returning fire. Bullets whipped past my head. One grazed my arm, hot and sharp. Another punched through my side, and I felt warm blood spreading across my shirt. I fired again. Missed. The pain in my side was growing, spreading, making it hard to aim, hard to think. Another shot, this one from behind me. I spun my horse around and saw Hayes on the ridge. He had a rifle to his shoulder, was firing methodically at Dalton's men. "Get out of here, Jacob," he shouted. "I'll hold them. Your family." I made my choice. "Now go." I didn't argue. I spurred my horse and rode hard into the darkness, following the trail Nora had taken. Behind me, I heard more gunfire. Heard men shouting. Heard Hayes fighting a battle he couldn't win. But he'd bought us time, bought us a chance. I rode through the pain, through the blood loss, through the darkness. Followed the sound of Nora's horse ahead. Caught up with them after 10 minutes of hard riding. "Mr. Morrison," Sam's voice was high with fear. "You're bleeding." "I'm fine, keep riding." We pushed through the night, following the mountain trail Hayes had described. It was narrow, treacherous, barely visible in the moonlight. One wrong step and we'd plunge into darkness. But we didn't stop, couldn't stop. Behind us, I thought I heard more gunfire. Then silence, heavy and complete. I didn't let myself think about what that silence meant, about Hayes, about the choice he'd made. We rode until dawn, until my vision started to blur and I could barely stay in the saddle. Nora finally called a halt in a small clearing hidden by thick pines. "We need to stop," she said. "You need medical attention." I slid off my horse, nearly fell. Nora caught me surprisingly strong for her size. Together we got me sitting against a tree. She examined the wound in my side. "Clean wound, but you've lost a lot of blood." "I'll be fine." "You'll be dead if we don't stop the bleeding." She tore strips from her dress, packed the wound, wrapped it tight. Her hands were steady, confident. "My mother taught me field medicine. We had to know it living so far from town. She raised you well. She was. Nora tied off the bandage. Rest. I'll keep watch. We should keep moving. In 2 hours, you need to regain some strength first. I wanted to argue, wanted to say we couldn't afford to stop, but my body had other ideas. The moment I closed my eyes, darkness took me. I woke to Sam shaking my shoulder. "Mr. Morrison, someone's coming." I forced myself awake, pain screaming through my side, grabbed my rifle. "How many?" "2 riders." Coming up the trail. We took cover behind trees, waiting. I aimed at the trail finger on the trigger. 2 horses emerged from the tree line. The first rider was Hayes, slumped in the saddle, bleeding from multiple wounds. The second was a rancher I recognized from town, one of my neighbors. They rode into the clearing, and Hayes nearly fell off his horse. Nora and I caught him, laid him down. "You idiot," I said. "I told you to stay back." Hayes coughed blood on his lips. "Changed my mind. Figured dying for something was better than living with nothing." He grabbed my arm. "Dalton's dead. So are 3 of his men. The rest scattered." "You killed him." "Had to. He was going to kill you, going to kill those kids." Hayes looked at Nora and Sam. "You get them to Helena. You get them that lawyer. You make sure my choice meant something. You're not dying. We'll get you help." "Yes, I am, and that's okay." He smiled, weak but genuine. "I chose right this time. I put others first. Tell my wife I'm sorry. Tell my son I love him. And tell them I died doing the right thing." He closed his eyes, stopped breathing. We buried Hayes at sunrise in that small clearing under the pines. It wasn't much of a grave, just a cairn of stones and a cross made from branches, but it was all we could give him. Sam cried. Nora stood silent, tears streaming down her face. I said a few words, talked about sacrifice, about redemption, about a man who'd found his courage when it mattered most. Then we rode on, carrying the weight of his choice with us into the mountains. The mountains were unforgiving. 3 days of hard riding turned into 5. My wounds slowed us down, forced us to take longer rests, move more carefully. Every mile was a battle against pain, exhaustion, and the creeping fear that Dalton's remaining men were still hunting us. But they never came. Maybe they'd given up. Maybe the death of their employer had scattered them to the winds, or maybe they were just waiting, watching, biding their time. We crossed into Helena on the 5th day, riding down from the mountains into a town that felt like another world. Streets, buildings, people, the noise and bustle of civilization after days of wilderness silence. Sam stared wide-eyed at everything. He'd never seen a town this size. Nora kept her eyes down, hand resting on the knife at her belt, still expecting danger around every corner. I directed us to the address Hayes had written down, a small office on a quiet street. The sign above the door read, "Edmund Foster, Attorney at Law." We tied our horses and went inside. The office was cramped, filled with books and papers. Behind a desk sat a man in his 60s, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, reading by lamplight, even though it was midday. He looked up when we entered, took in our trail-worn appearance, my blood-stained shirt, the children's haunted faces. "Mr. Foster," I said. "Yes." "Deputy Hayes sent us, said you might be able to help." Recognition flickered in his eyes. "Hayes, how is he?" "Dead. Died protecting these children." Foster stood, slowly walked around his desk. "Tell me everything." So we did. Nora did most of the talking, her voice steady, despite the tremor in her hands. She told him about her parents, about the fire, about Garrett Dalton and his claim on their land, about copper deposits and railroad deals and men who'd rather kill than share. I filled in the rest, the running, the fighting, Hayes's sacrifice. When we finished, Foster was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "I'll take your case, but I need you to understand something. This won't be easy. Garrett Dalton may be dead, but he had partners, investors, men who've already put money into developing that land. They won't give it up without a fight." "We're not asking them to give up anything," Nora said, "just what's rightfully ours. The law doesn't always care about what's right, only what can be proven." He pulled out paper, started writing. "We'll need land records, deeds, proof of your father's mineral surveys, witness testimony about the fire. Most of that burned, I said. Most, but not all. Your father filed his initial land claim with the territorial office. Those records still exist. And if he was as thorough as you say, he would have filed copies of his mineral surveys too. Foster kept writing his pen, scratching across paper. It'll take time, weeks, maybe months. In the meantime, you'll need somewhere safe to stay. We have my ranch, I said, which is the first place anyone looking for them will check. Foster set down his pen. I have a colleague, Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, runs a boarding house for families in legal disputes. Safe, secure, the children can stay there while we build the case. Nora looked at me, uncertainty in her eyes. I nodded. It's the smart move. You'll be safer here than out in the open. What about you? She asked. I'll head back. Make sure the ranch is secure. Testify when the time comes. You're leaving us. The hurt in her voice cut deeper than Dalton's bullet had. Not leaving, just giving you space to heal, to be kids again instead of fugitives. We don't know how to be kids anymore. Then you'll have to learn. Foster made the arrangements. The boarding house was a large, comfortable place run by a stern woman named Mrs. Patterson. She took one look at Nora and Sam, and her expression softened. Poor dears, she said. Come in. We'll get you fed and cleaned up. Sam went willingly, drawn by the promise of hot food and a real bed. Nora hesitated on the threshold. It's okay, I told her. You're safe here. How do you know? Because Hayes trusted Foster, and I trust Hayes. She looked at me, this girl who'd been forced to grow up too fast, who'd lost everything and kept fighting anyway. Will you come back? For the trial, I promise. And after, I didn't have an answer for that. Didn't know what came after. Didn't know if there was a future where a broken rancher and 2 orphaned children could build something that looked like family. We'll figure it out, I said. She nodded, not satisfied, but accepting. Then she did something unexpected. She hugged me, quick and fierce, like she was afraid I'd disappear if she didn't hold on tight enough. I hugged her back, feeling something crack open in my chest. Some wall I'd built 4 years ago, brick by brick, grief by grief. When she pulled away, there were tears in her eyes. Thank you for everything. You saved me too, I said. Don't forget that. I left Helena the next morning, rode back through the mountains, alone, retracing the trail we'd carved together. The journey felt longer without them, quieter. The silence pressed down like a physical weight. I thought about Hayes, about his choice, about how he'd spent 5 years paralyzed by fear, afraid to risk what he had left. And then in the end, he'd risked everything anyway. Not because he stopped being afraid, but because he decided some things were worth dying for. I thought about Rebecca and Annie, about the last morning I'd seen them alive, Rebecca kissing me goodbye, Annie running back for one more hug. Small moments I'd taken for granted, never knowing they were the last. I thought about Nora and Sam, about how they'd stumbled into my life and turned everything upside down, how they'd reminded me what my house was supposed to sound like, what my life was supposed to feel like. The ranch looked different when I finally rode up to it. Smaller somehow, emptier. The silence that had been my companion for 4 years now felt suffocating. I checked the property, made repairs to the damage from the gunfight, buried the men who'd fallen in my yard. It was grim work made worse by the pain in my side that still hadn't fully healed. That night I sat in my chair by the fireplace and realized something. This house wasn't my home anymore. It was just a building. 4 walls and a roof. The home had been the people inside it. First Rebecca and Annie, then Nora and Sam. And now it was empty again. 3 months passed. Long, slow months of healing and waiting. Foster sent regular letters updating me on the case. They'd found the land records, found proof of Thomas Dalton's mineral surveys, found witnesses willing to testify about Garrett's threats and suspicious behavior before the fire. But they'd also found complications. Garrett's investors had hired their own lawyers. were claiming that even if the land belonged to Nora and Sam, they'd already purchased development rights from Garrett, that contracts had been signed, money had changed hands. It was going to trial. I received the summons in early spring. The trial would begin in Helena in 2 weeks. My testimony was required. I arrived in Helena on a cold March morning. The town felt different this time, less foreign, almost familiar. Foster met me at his office. "Good to see you, Morrison. How's the wound? Healed enough?" I sat down feeling the old ache in my side. "How are the children?" "Strong. Resilient. Nora's been helping Mrs. Patterson with the younger kids at the boarding house, teaching them to read. Sam's made friends. They're doing well." "Have they asked about me?" "Every day." Something warm spread through my chest. "Can I see them? After the trial. Better to keep things simple until this is settled." Foster pulled out a stack of papers. "I need to prepare you for what's coming. The defense is going to paint Garrett as a concerned uncle trying to help his orphaned niece and nephew. They'll say the fire was an accident, that Nora and Sam's memories are unreliable. What about the men he hired, the ones who attacked us, claimed they were searching for missing children, that they acted in self-defense when you opened fire? That's a lie." "I know, but they'll have witnesses who'll swear to it. This is going to come down to credibility, yours against theirs. The children's word against a dead man who can't defend himself." The trial began on a Monday. The courtroom was packed. Investors, lawyers, townspeople drawn by the spectacle. And sitting in the front row, Nora and Sam. Nora had been given a proper dress. Her hair was clean brushed, tied back with a ribbon. She looked older somehow, more composed. But when our eyes met, I saw the scared girl who'd knocked on my door with her dying brother in her arms. Sam waved at me. I nodded back, not trusting my voice. The prosecution called Nora first. She walked to the witness stand with her head high, shoulders back. Sworn in, sat down. Foster led her through her testimony. The fire, her parents' deaths, overhearing Garrett admit to arson, the flight, the hunting. All of it delivered in a clear, steady voice. Then came the cross-examination. The defense attorney was a sharp man named Caldwell, expensive suit, predatory smile. "Miss Dalton," he began, "you were how old when the fire occurred?" 14. "And you were locked in a cellar at the time?" "Yes." "Dark cellar?" "Yes." "And yet you claim to have overheard your uncle confessing to arson through a locked door in a dark cellar while your house burned around you." "I know what I heard." "Do you? Or is it possible that in your grief and your trauma you've constructed a memory that makes sense of senseless tragedy?" "I know what I heard." Nora repeated, her voice harder. "Your uncle is dead, Miss Dalton. Killed by Deputy Marshal Hayes. Convenient that the man you've accused can't defend himself. He died because he was trying to kidnap us, or because he was trying to rescue you from a man who'd taken you against your will." Caldwell gestured to me. "Mr. Morrison, a stranger, a man you'd never met, and yet you went with him willingly, stayed with him for months, didn't try to escape, didn't seek help. He was helping us, or he was manipulating you, filling your head with stories about your uncle, turning you against your own family." "That's not true." "Isn't it? You were a traumatized child, suggestible, desperate for someone to tell you it wasn't your fault your parents died. And Mr. Morrison gave you that, gave you someone to blame, someone to hate." Nora was shaking now, tears running down her cheeks. "He saved us. My uncle tried to kill us." "Your uncle tried to bring you home, and for that he was murdered." Foster objected. The judge sustained. But the damage was done. During Foster's closing arguments, he presented new evidence. A witness from Missoula testified that Garrett had hired 2 men to send Thomas Dalton a message. The plan was simple: burn the barn, scare him, force him to sell. But Garrett Dalton made a fatal mistake, Foster told the jury. He chose a windy night. The fire spread faster than anyone anticipated. By the time he realized the main house was burning, Thomas and Margaret Dalton were already trapped inside. Foster paused, letting the words sink in. Garrett didn't pull the trigger, but he lit the match. And when his brother's family burned, instead of helping, instead of confessing, he stood in that yard and watched. Then he claimed the land. That is his crime. Not premeditated murder, but criminal negligence, greed. And the cold calculation to profit from a tragedy he caused. The courtroom was silent. I could see it in the jury's faces, the doubt, the uncertainty. They called me next. I told my story. The night Nora and Sam arrived, Sam's wound, the men who attacked, Hayes's sacrifice. Caldwell tore into me like a dog with a bone. "Mr. Morrison, you're a widower, correct?" "Yes." "Your wife and daughter died 4 years ago, murdered." "Yes." "And you've lived alone ever since, isolated, grieving." "Yes." "Would you say you were lonely, Mr. Morrison?" I saw where he was going. I was managing. Managing. Interesting word. Not thriving, not happy, just managing. Caldwell paced in front of the jury. "And then 2 children appear at your door, a girl roughly the same age your daughter would have been, a boy who needed protection, needed a father figure. That's not why I helped them. Isn't it possible that you saw these children as a replacement for the family you lost, that you convinced yourself they needed saving so you could feel needed again? I helped them because it was the right thing to do. Or because you couldn't save your own family, so you decided to save someone else's, even if it meant turning them against their legal guardian, even if it meant killing that guardian. I didn't kill Garrett Dalton, Hayes did. After you refused to return the children, after you opened fire on men lawfully searching for missing minors. They weren't searching, they were hunting, according to you. According to 2 children you'd been alone with for months. Children you had every opportunity to influence, to manipulate. The testimony went on for days, witnesses for both sides, technical experts analyzing property records, character witnesses praising Garrett's generosity and questioning my stability. But the turning point came when they called Mrs. Patterson. She took the stand with the bearing of a general, looked Caldwell straight in the eye, and dared him to intimidate her. "Mrs. Patterson," he began, "you run a boarding house, correct?" "I do." "And Nora and Samuel Dalton have been staying with you for 3 months?" "Yes." "In that time have they seemed troubled, confused? They've seemed like children who've been through hell and are trying to heal. Have they mentioned their uncle, only to say they're glad he's dead?" Caldwell smiled. "Doesn't that seem harsh, unnatural?" "What seems unnatural is a man burning down his brother's house with children inside." "Objection," Caldwell said. "The witness is speculating." "Sustained," the judge said. Mrs. Patterson ignored him. "I've seen a lot of children in my 30 years running that house. Runaways, orphans, abuse victims. I know the difference between a child who's been manipulated and a child who's been genuinely terrorized. Those children were running for their lives. Anyone with eyes can see that." "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. No further questions." But she wasn't done. She turned to the jury. "Garrett Dalton came to my house once, tried to bribe me to turn the children over, offered me $500. When I refused, he threatened to have my boarding house shut down, said he had friends on the city council." She looked at Caldwell. "That's the man you're defending, a man who threatened a widow for protecting children." "Your Honor," Caldwell was on his feet. "Mrs. Patterson, you will limit your answers to the questions asked. I'm done answering questions from men who care more about money than children." She stepped down, walked past Caldwell without looking at him. The mood in the courtroom shifted after that. I could feel it, see it in the jurors' faces. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Final arguments were made. The prosecution painted Garrett as a greedy man who'd committed murder for profit. The defense painted me as a broken man who'd stolen children to fill the hole in his life. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they finally returned, the courtroom was silent. The foreman stood. In the matter of custody of Nora and Samuel Dalton, we find that the late Garrett Dalton's claim was obtained through fraudulent means and is hereby voided. Nora grabbed Sam, both of them crying. Furthermore, we find that Jacob Morrison acted in good faith to protect said minors from credible threats to their safety. Relief flooded through me so intense I had to grip the table to stay upright. However, the foreman continued, given Mr. Morrison's unmarried status and the children's need for a stable family environment, we recommend custody be granted to Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, with Mr. Morrison granted visitation rights pending review in 1 year. The words hit like a punch. They were safe. The land was theirs, but I was losing them anyway. Nora turned to look at me, devastation in her eyes. The judge banged his gavel. So ordered. Court adjourned. I stood outside the courthouse trying to process what had just happened. We'd won. The children were safe, their inheritance protected. Garrett's investors had lost their claim. Everything we'd fought for had been achieved. So why did it feel like losing Mr. Morrison? I turned. Foster stood behind me, papers under his arm. "I'm sorry," he said. "I fought for full custody, but the judge felt the children needed a woman's influence, a proper family setting. I understand. You can petition again in a year. With character references, proof of stable home environment, there's a good chance it's fine. They'll be better off with Mrs. Patterson. Will they?" Foster looked at me. "Or will they be safe, but heartbroken?" Before I could answer, Nora came running out of the courthouse. She slammed into me, wrapped her arms around my waist, and held on like she'd never let go. "This isn't fair," she said, voice muffled against my chest. "You saved us. You risked everything for us. And now they're taking us away." "They're not taking you away. They're giving you a home, a real home. You're our home." Sam joined us, threw his small arms around both of us. "Don't leave us, Mr. Morrison. Please don't leave us." I knelt down, looked them both in the eyes. "I'm not leaving you. I'll be here. I'll visit. I'll write letters. And in a year when you're settled and happy, we'll figure out what comes next." "What if we don't want to wait a year?" Nora asked. "Then we'll petition sooner. But right now you need stability, education, normal life, things I can't give you alone on a ranch." "We don't need normal. We need you." Mrs. Patterson appeared in the courthouse doorway. "Children, time to go." They didn't move, just held on to me tighter. "Go on," I said gently. "I'll come visit next week, I promise." Reluctantly, they let go, walked slowly to Mrs. Patterson, looking back every few steps. I watched them disappear into the boarding house down the street, watched the door close, stood there long after they were gone, feeling emptier than I had in 4 years. That night I sat in a hotel room and wrote letters, one to Nora, one to Sam, telling them about the ranch, about the horses, about how I was fixing up Annie's room, making it ready for them, about how I was planting a garden because Nora had once mentioned she liked flowers, about how I was learning to hope again. I stayed in Helena for 2 weeks, visited every day, brought gifts, books for Nora, a wooden horse I'd carved for Sam. We took walks, told stories, pretended everything was normal. But it wasn't normal. Every visit had an ending. Every goodbye hurt more than the last. Finally, Foster called me to his office. "I have news. Mrs. Patterson has submitted a petition." "For what?" "She's asking the court to grant you co-guardianship. Says the children need you in their lives. That separating you is causing more harm than good." Hope flared. "Will it work?" "The judge is considering it, but he wants to see your ranch first. Wants to make sure it's suitable for children. When 2 weeks, he'll ride out personally to inspect the property." I left Helena that afternoon, rode hard for home. And for the first time in months, I let myself believe. The ranch looked the same as always, weathered, worn, home. I spent the next 2 weeks transforming it, fixed the broken shutters, painted the porch, cleaned Annie's room until it gleamed, built a second bed, hung curtains, stocked the pantry with food, the barn with supplies. I worked from dawn until dark, driven by desperate hope. This had to work. Had to. The judge arrived on a Thursday. Tall man, stern-faced, impossible to read. He walked through the house, the barn, the property, made notes, asked questions. "Why do you want custody, Mr. Morrison?" "Because they need me, and I need them. Many children need homes. Why these two?" I thought about how to answer, about all the reasons that made sense, about duty and justice and doing the right thing. But in the end, I told him the truth. because they walked into my life when I was ready to give up, when I decided that surviving was enough. They reminded me what living feels like, what hope feels like. I looked him in the eye. I failed my first family, let them down when they needed me most. These children are my second chance, and I won't fail them. The judge was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. You'll have my decision in 1 week, the longest week of my life. Every day dragged like a year. Every night I lay awake imagining best and worst outcomes. Finally the letter came. Official seal, territorial court. My hands shook as I opened it. The court hereby grants Jacob Morrison co-guardianship of Nora and Samuel Dalton to be shared with Mrs. Eleanor Patterson for a period of 1 year, at which time full custody may be reviewed. I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Then I saddled my horse and rode for Helena. I found them in the garden behind the boarding house. Nora was reading to a group of younger children. Sam was playing with a dog throwing sticks, laughing. They looked happy, healthy, whole. Nora saw me first. She stood slowly, book falling from her hands. Mr. Morrison. I dismounted, pulled the letter from my pocket. Pack your things. You're coming home. She read the letter, started crying, handed it to Sam, who couldn't read it but understood anyway. They ran to me both at once, and I caught them, held them. My children, not by blood but by choice, by love, by everything that mattered. We're going home, Sam asked. Yes. For how long? Forever, if you want. We want, Nora said. We want. Mrs. Patterson came out smiling. About time. These two have been making themselves sick, missing you. Thank you, I said, for everything. Just make them happy. That's thanks enough. We left Helena that afternoon, rode south toward home. The journey felt different this time, lighter, full of possibility. Sam talked nonstop about the ranch, about the horses, about all the things he was going to do. Nora was quieter, but I caught her smiling. Real smiles, the kind that reached her eyes. As we rode, I thought about Rebecca and Annie, about how they'd want me to be happy, want me to live, want me to open my heart again. And I thought about Hayes buried in that mountain clearing, about his sacrifice, about how he'd chosen right in the end. We reached the ranch at sunset. The house glowed golden in the fading light. Home. Sam ran inside, exploring, claiming the second bed in Annie's room. Nora stood on the porch, looking out at the valley. It's beautiful, she said. It is now. She turned to me. Can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think my parents would be proud of what we did, of how we fought? I think they'd be amazed, grateful, and so proud they could burst. And your wife, your daughter. Do you think they'd be okay with us being here? I thought about Rebecca's last letter, the one I'd found in her coat pocket after she died. The one where she'd written, "Don't let grief make you hard, Jacob. Stay open. Stay kind. There's so much love left in you. Don't waste it." I think they'd love you, I said, just like I do. Nora's eyes filled with tears. You love us more than I thought I could love anything again. She hugged me, and I felt the last piece of the wall around my heart crumble. That night we had dinner together. Simple food, but it tasted like celebration. Sam told stories between bites. Nora laughed at his exaggerations. The house filled with noise, with life, with joy. After dinner, Nora asked to see the cottonwood tree, the place where Rebecca and Annie were buried. We walked there in the twilight, the 3 of us. The crosses were weathered now, the names faded but still readable. Nora knelt, placed wildflowers on both graves. Mrs. Morrison, Annie. I'm Nora. This is my brother Sam. We're living in your house now, with Mr. Morrison. I hope that's okay. Sam knelt beside her. We'll take care of him. I promise. I knelt too, touching Rebecca's cross. I finally did it, Rebecca. I opened the door. I let people in. And you were right. It didn't make the pain go away, but it made it worth carrying. The wind blew through the cottonwood leaves, creating a sound like whispered approval. We stood there until the stars came out. 3 people bound by loss and love, standing at the place where endings and beginnings met. Then we walked back to the house, to the light, to the future. The next morning, I woke to the sound of children's laughter. Sam was chasing chickens in the yard. Nora was making breakfast, humming a tune I didn't recognize. I stood in the doorway, coffee in hand, watching my family. My second chance. My redemption. The house that had been a tomb for 4 years was alive again, full of hope and noise and possibility. And I thought, this is what Hayes died for. This is what he chose. Not just their safety, but their joy, their future, their chance to be children again. I made a silent promise to him, to Rebecca, to Annie, to everyone who'd been lost along the way. I would protect this, nurture this, make it last, because sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't facing death. It's choosing to live, to love, to open your heart even when you know it can be broken. Sam ran up to me breathless. "Mr. Morrison, can we go riding today? Can you teach me to rope cattle?" "We can do whatever you want, son." "Really? Really?" Nora joined us on the porch carrying plates of eggs and bacon. Breakfast first, then adventures. We ate together in the morning sun, planning the day, planning the future. And for the first time in 4 years, I felt complete. Not because I'd forgotten Rebecca and Annie, but because I'd learned that love doesn't replace love. It multiplies it, grows it, makes room for new people without erasing the old. My first family would always be part of me, their memory, their love, their loss. But so would Nora and Sam, my second family, my second chance, the family I'd chosen and who'd chosen me back. Later that week, Foster sent the final papers. The land was officially Nora's, held in trust until she turned 18. The copper rights, the railroad easement, all of it. She could have sold it, could have walked away rich, could have started over anywhere in the world. Instead, she asked me to help her manage it, to work the ranch together, to build something lasting. "This land cost my parents their lives," she said. "I want to make it mean something, want to make it into something they'd be proud of." So we worked. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. We hired help, built new structures, started a small mining operation. The copper was real valuable enough to ensure Nora and Sam's futures. But more than that, we built a home, a real home full of laughter and love and second chances. Sam grew strong and confident, learned to ride to rope, to work the land, started school in town, made friends, became the child he was meant to be. Nora grew into a remarkable young woman, smart, capable, kind. She worked alongside me every day, learning the business, making plans for the future. And I learned to be a father again. Learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting, that you can honor the dead by living fully, that love is infinite and there's always room for more. On the anniversary of Rebecca and Annie's death, we went to the cottonwood tree together. Nora and Sam had picked flowers, had written letters to the family they'd never met. Nora read hers aloud. "Dear Mrs. Morrison and Annie, thank you for sharing your husband and father with us. Thank you for teaching him how to love so he could teach us. We promise to take care of him just like you did. And we promise to live the kind of lives that would make you proud." Sam's letter was shorter, simpler. "Dear Annie, I wish I could have met you. I think we would have been friends. I'm taking good care of your room and your dad. He's my dad too now. I hope that's okay." I didn't read mine aloud, just placed it on Rebecca's grave, weighted down with a stone. But in my heart, I spoke to her, told her about Nora's graduation, about Sam's first successful cattle drive, about the laughter that filled our house, about how I'd finally learned to live again. And I thanked her for loving me, for teaching me, for that last letter that had given me permission to move forward. As we walked back to the house, Sam between us, Nora slipped her hand into mine. "Thank you," she said, "for what? For opening your door that night, for not turning us away, for giving us a home. You gave me one too. We saved each other then. Yes, we did." The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The house waited, warm and welcoming, smoke rising from the chimney. Our home, our family, our second chance. And I thought, this is what redemption looks like, not erasing the past but building something beautiful from its ruins. Not forgetting the dead, but honoring them by living fully. Not closing your heart to avoid pain, but opening it wider to let in more love. The girl who'd asked to sleep in my barn had given me more than I'd given her. She'd given me back my life. And that I realized was the greatest gift of all. We reached the house and went inside, closing the door against the growing darkness. But inside, there was only light, only warmth, only love, only home. And that night, for the first time in 4 years, I didn't sit by the fire mourning what I'd lost. I sat at the dinner table with my children celebrating what I'd found.